You said the world was going to end when?
What time is it?
uh,
Start the game already!
hey.
Hey, what's going on?
So I have a question for you. I may have asked this before. I don't know. And I don't know if I've asked it actually while people were listening or not. Did you actually drop a bottle cap on the ground to record that, or did you pick that up somewhere?
I picked that sound up. Actually, we were talking about it just before we hit record. Pixabay.
Yeah.
Has a whole bunch of sound effects, and that was one of them. Royalty free. Accreditation not needed, but hey, we got it from Pixabay. A lot of our sound effects and music come from Pixabay.
It's a great resource.
Shout out to those guys.
And all of the people who contribute to it, because it's like a crowdsourcing thing, right?
Indeed. So we've had a busy day on the YouTube channel today.
We have.
For those of you that tuned in 2 episodes ago, we talked about kicking off a little side series. And the name of it's still up in the air. Right now we're calling it Nerd Fights. But the general idea was that we would challenge each other to do something. We'd both contribute to the idea in some way that may or may not blend together very well. And then we'd go do it. It was meant to be just this small thing. And I think we both took the first kick at the can way too seriously. But I have to say, I had a blast with it.
It was, yeah, I really enjoyed doing it. I enjoyed listening to yours. I was both extremely impressed and a little bit peeved at you including your wife in the project.
Well, that was sort of a spur of the moment thing. And I have to say, that's one of the things that I was most happy about.
Oh, she nailed it out of the park.
Oh, absolutely. But when we do things, like we both have creative things that we do, but it's rare that they're creative things together. And I don't want to oversell this, but I asked her to do it and she said, sure, but I'm not sure entirely she got the idea right away. Cause like I was trying to describe it. And as soon as I broke out, well, it's a D&D one shot. And it's like, are you going to be doing this one shot? Well, no, the challenge is to do the intro, and it's going to be detective noir, but also Telson's furry fixation.
I mean, I would like to object, but
you're not in a position to object.
I'm not. I mean, the thing is that like our cuteness circuits are overloaded by animated anthropomorphic animals. Mine too. So there you go. Having said that, though, I actually had an idea and it floated around in my brain. I didn't remember it until just now. And that is, what if we actually like made some kind of a one shot / story / module, whatever, sort of going off of the 2 things that we did?
It'd be fun. It also sounds like work.
Yeah.
So what are the odds that we actually follow through on it? Pretty low. But before I move off of the idea of getting my wife involved, because yes, she was my trump card. She did really, really well. Like she was a good sport about it. And I basically just set her up, hey, this is kind of what I want. Think Jessica Rabbit. Like I didn't play her any of the stuff that I was recording. I had a Google Doc that I just sort of wrote out a script and I said, this line or two right here, that's what I want you to read. And she's like, okay.
Yeah.
And going through the editing process on it early this morning, I have to say that I think that's my favorite part about it. Not the part that she did, but that we actually did something together like that.
I gotta say, man, the part that she did is the standout feature of your little blurb.
Oh yeah. And again, I'm not trying to sell that part of it short. She did amazing, but it was that we did something that creative together for no reason at all. Like, it has no purpose. It was a dumb, silly idea that is not going to, few people are going to watch it and zero people are going to remember it. But it means something to me because it's one of my nerdy, dorky things that she was like, yeah, I'll get involved in that.
Yeah.
She did it. And, no questions asked, basically. And
Oh,
it
that's
was good.
cool. Yeah. I did a little bit of workshopping of the idea with my wife, but I never even considered the idea that, of hiring a voice actor. Come on.
I had fun with the whole thing, though.
It
And
was a fun thing.
I'm not embarrassed to say at all that I spent more time fussing over, 3 minutes worth of dialogue. But
Yeah.
this is why I could never write a book, right? Because I'd never finish the prologue.
Oh yeah. Yeah. The first 3 pages would get edited a million times. And that's exactly where I'm at, because I have like 3 or 4 books, stories, whatever, that I've started writing, and I can't get past that point because it's
Mhm.
like it's not good enough. I have to redo it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had exactly the same experience queuing up and changing the timing of when does that thunder start, when does this, what kind of clinking noises do I want in the background? Yeah.
So, did you record most of it in a single take?
Yes. Yeah, there's a little bit. I bobbled a little bit of one line when I was talking about him taking off his hat and smoothing back what's left of his hair. There was a little bit of a hitch there, and I'm just like, you know what? The premise is that, like, I'm reading this as an opener for a one shot. So I did it, and I think I did do it in sort of 3 chunks, and then I sort of put it all together. But it was, yeah. I mean, I did. I think I started recording 3 times because I made a complete and utter hash of it the first 2, and then I recorded it all just the third time. Done. I did spend an awful lot of time looking for sound effects on Pixabay and putting them in and crossfading them from here to there. And
Yeah. It's funny. Like, I want to get into the meat of what we did and talk about our approach a little bit different, but it's just a couple of obvious things I want to point out. While they were very, very different,
Mhm.
I don't know how you can do noir, furry, anthropomorphic animal things, a million different ways or whatever, but they were very different, but there was a lot of similarity, so much so that we landed on the same background music by accident
Yes,
completely.
that was hilarious. It's the
That was
perfect
funny.
music for both of them, though.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
You know?
Um, I tried something a little bit different with mine, and I think it probably hurts me a little bit. Like, I mean, this isn't about winning anymore. It was
Oh,
the experience of doing it. But
and it was never about winning.
if you look at it from the angle of like trying to achieve the objectives, I think I strayed away from it being a D&D one-shot opener a little bit. It's more in line like what I talked about last week about doing sort of the mission briefs.
Yeah.
And I was trying to be cognizant of the fact that, like, I was running a detective one shot, or I'm planning a detective one shot. So I didn't want to answer all the questions up front, even about like what's going on. I wanted to leave it pretty vague because the assumption would be, okay, you're detectives now.
Yeah.
Start asking questions, and that's kind of how I left it. Which is different from me. Like, normally my approach when I do it is a little bit more similar to what you did, where it's like I'm giving you the lead in so that you don't
Yep.
have too many questions. You're ready to just start making decisions and acting.
Here's the
Yeah.
hook.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's the funny thing, is because typically I do, because I noticed about your piece that you did a lot more world building. There was a lot more, here's who you are, and here's what the world is.
Yeah. I was
And
really focused on tone more than
yes.
direction, you know?
Yeah, you set the tone really well. I was much more focused on sort of, here's like an opening scene kind of thing and a hook
Hmm.
to get you started, which is weird because that's exactly the opposite of what I normally do. Because what I normally do is I give people a whole bunch of vague, wishy-washy stuff, let them, be their characters and figure out where they're going, and then that directs what happens with the adventure. So it's almost like we flip flopped exactly our normal styles. It's neat. It was a
Yeah,
lot of
and
fun to do.
it was
I
a
had a
lot of fun.
blast.
Before we get in the weeds, I should say the idea here is anybody that's listening, you can go to our YouTube channel, Nerding Under the Influence, and you'll find a new playlist called Nerd Fights, or it's just in our latest videos. There's a recap of our session last week where we kicked off the idea if you want to reference it. But there's two submission videos, one from Telson, one from myself. The idea is that you listen to them. If you like them both. If you like one more than the other, maybe just like that one, and we'll use that as sort of a rough idea of declaring a winner. Not, we're all winners here, but this is going to be an ongoing, mildly to moderately competitive thing, I think. And
I
while
hope
I'm
so.
just basking in the afterglow now of the experience of it and how much fun I had, at some point I'm going to care about winning.
I'm not. I'm just I like I just want to take part. I just want to play. That's it. Oh. I do like the idea though of picking up sort of this, I don't know what you call it, this thread or this idea.
Mm.
And even if it's, 3 minutes at a time, maybe we do alternate weeks where one week you do a 3 minute, here's how the story goes, and the next week I do a 3 minute, here's what happens next. Sort of an experience in chain storytelling. I don't know. Might be worth exploring. See how long we can keep it going before either one of us gets bored.
Yeah. I think if we're going to do that,
We're going to want something a little meatier.
well, not meteor, but we already did this, and I know myself, I'm already a little married to my ideas.
Mm-hmm.
And if it were a D&D game and I was playing with players, obviously you need to be able to break up with your ideas. But because it's more of a creative exercise, I think I would need to go into something with the intention of it being a baton passing type thing, so that I don't get married to the idea too much. I would approach it
Okay.
a little bit differently too, right? Like, so that there was,
Some direction, some breadcrumbs, a
yeah,
little
but
bit,
more
a
more
little
like
bit more yes and.
well, and more like, well, we were talking in our Star Wars episode about how they had zero planning and there was just
Oh yeah.
like nobody talked to each other, and nobody, more importantly, had any consideration for what would come after they were done.
Mm-hmm.
So they just did what they want to do, and fuck it, this is your problem now. And I think I would want to approach that sort of exercise from just a like, hey, here's some ground rules. If we're going to introduce some stuff, just don't close the book on it for the other person. Like
Fair.
don't don't shut down other people's ideas, and at the same time don't, it's sort of like sharing the spotlight as a tabletop player,
Sure.
and I
Sure.
think just
I think we'd need to strike the balance between having an idea, having a structure, having some rules that make sense, so that we can actually um, you know carry forward and have an idea of sort of where we're going, but at the same time not lose the idea of the utter chaos that happens of we don't have a plot. There is no plot. We're
mhm.
improvising as we go along. Right. So I wouldn't want to
No, I
uh
wouldn't want to create like a big plan, like the sort of
no.
the framework of a plot. Like I just more establish what the courtesies are that we're going to,
Yes.
you know, pay
Well,
respect to with regards to this being a shared story, and
exactly. Yeah, it would have to be, and importantly too, is characters would have to be sort of, this is who the character is, right? And there might have to be a little bit of consultation about, like, okay, in this situation, how would this character that you are responsible for creating, how would they react?
yeah.
Right? Not necessarily like tell me what they would say or what they would do, but like what would be their, like, would they like this? Would they dislike it? Would they hate it? That kind of thing. General vibey things.
So to take this one step further, because I like to overcomplicate everything,
Of course.
do we make this not a D&D thing at all? and we approach this more like we talked a long time about doing like radio serial style
Yeah,
kind of,
I think so.
you know, don't actually go to the trouble of voicing it, but create it as if
Mm,
that was sort of the goal. Even if we were just sort of rough voicey storyboardy or whatever, like,
yeah,
I see this as being a long-term project that we just kind of pick away as we got some spare time or whatever.
yeah,
That's the other important thing to go back to the nerd fights moving forward. We probably need to make this like a monthly thing rather than
yes.
a weekly or bi-weekly
Uh,
thing.
Absolutely, yeah. No, it's the kind of thing where, or we do something where we space it out, where one person go. No, it makes sense to do it. I think by the month, because they both should whatever it is, they should both come out at the same time. And I think monthly makes sense, or bi-monthly even. Quarterly doesn't have to be. I spent probably a couple of hours coming up with ideas just in the back of my head, like mostly when I was not doing anything else anyway.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I spent about 3 hours today putting it together. So this one wasn't really all that time consuming. Uh, a couple of hours in the writing, and then, well, I guess it was probably about 6 hours in total. So maybe it was a little time consuming.
Yeah.
uh,
While we're
uh,
trying to do other things like keep jobs and keep
what?
marriages and
I don't really like
play
working.
Baldur's Gate. Yeah.
Oh yes,
I don't think I
yes.
can do that anymore either.
Many Baldur's Gates. We didn't. You know what? We skipped the first little bit. For the people who don't actually watch the video where we flash our alcohol in front of the camera. So what are you drinking tonight?
Boring. I'm drinking Summersby regular apple cider.
And I have vodka and pink lemonade. I really, really want to get through this vodka to the point where I might just get fantastically drunk tonight so that I have to replace it for next week.
I mean, you can use it as a cleaner. You don't have to drink it.
Yeah, but that feels wasteful.
Have you looked at the price of good cleaners lately?
It's true. It's true.
You might be coming out ahead.
Yeah, but then my house will smell like vodka.
So in terms of wrapping up round one,
Mm-hmm.
we want to give it 2 weeks.
That sounds
And
about right.
then we'll talk about the next one at least. Come
Yeah.
up with an idea for it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I came up with the idea for this one, so I think the next one should be your idea.
Okay, I'll come up with the format and then we'll each contribute to the topic.
Yeah, that sounds like a plan. Oh, I would like also to say, because I wrote in the show notes, which, I mean, nobody but us ever sees, that we should talk about round one and how Shane cheated by recruiting talent. But I would also like to say that we set a hard limit of 3 minutes, and my video is 3 minutes and 19 seconds.
That's the first thing I pointed out. I won. I was going to give you the benefit of the doubt because I know at the end I was like, oh, I'm going to kick him just the NUTI image to throw on as a bumper, thinking that, oh, well, he's probably got that just sitting in front of it or something. No, you were just over here.
I was squished, and when I let Cindy listen to it, and the one comment she had was, it's a little bit condensed, like it's a little squished. I'm like, yeah, I know. I got diarrhea of the keyboard, and I just kept writing and writing, and I'm like, all of this is good stuff. I have to say it.
That was a pretty big challenge for me too. Like I paced out the writing and reading it myself because I was going for a tone, so I didn't want it to be sort of rapid
Dense.
and
Yeah.
dense. And I ended up recording it. My process, I didn't do it in one take. So I just actually did like 3 or 4 takes of each like mini paragraph.
Mm-hmm.
Until I was confident I had one that I'd like, and I move on. I record 3 or 4 takes of the next little block of text. Then the next day or same day, whatever, had Tanya come in and do hers. And now I need to apologize. Part of her agreeing to do it was that I didn't tell anyone that it was her. But you technically
I did.
did
I'm
that.
so sorry. I did not know. That was in the blind.
I think now that she's heard it, she'd probably be okay with us saying that. That was like the stipulation when she had no idea what the fuck I was talking about. It was like, yeah, I'll do it, but just don't tell anyone it's me.
Anyone who knows her though and hears that, it's her.
My wife has a hot voice.
Mhm.
Like it's crazy. It's warm, it's soft. Sometimes I have a hard time hearing words. Like there's, that old stereotype of like husbands after they've been married for 10, 15, 20, 30 years where they just like don't hear their wife anymore.
Yep.
And sometimes when we're talking, I don't know if my hearing's pretty good. I hear things that she doesn't hear constantly. Oh, the dog's outside barking. Oh, there's this going on. Oh, there's somebody about to come in the door. But I have such a hard time picking her out
Hmm?
sometimes. And it isn't that I'm actively tuning her out, but she just has that sort of soft mid-range voice
Yep.
that
It fits really well with jazz. Let's just say that she could be a jazz singer, I think, and her
she could
voice
be.
would fit
She's a
perfectly. Yeah.
hell of a singer.
Well, there you go.
So anyway, back to chunking it up. I recorded all those takes and then I like sliced them up into chunks so that I'd like, here's my 3 minutes. I put my music down from start to finish, did my fade out of the music, and I'm like, now I need to fit it all in. So there was this process in editing it where I was just moving stuff around, trying to adjust timing and gaps to both make it all fit, but make the parts that needed to have enough breathing room there. And like my fallback was there was a couple of pieces that I could have just taken out if I needed a little bit more time.
I probably should have done that. I'll be honest with you. I approached this very much with a like throw the spaghetti against the wall and see what sticks. Like I wrote until I had what I thought was this is the complete scene,
Mm-hmm.
and then I read it and went, 3 minutes and 20 seconds, close enough. Like there was no timing. There was no, is this going to be enough or too much or not enough? I don't know. I'm going to read it and see how long it takes. Oh, it took about that amount of
Oh,
time.
and I suspect that like I'll be doing one takers by the third or fourth round of doing this stuff. It'll be like, oh shit, I was supposed to have something done today.
Yep.
Record. Fuck it. We'll do it live.
I mean, it's
We'll do
pretty
it
much
live.
that's pretty much the theme of this podcast, isn't it? It's like, so what's our topic today? Ooh, I better write something down. Yeah, we've started recording. You better write a script.
It's funny because it's true.
Yeah. Yeah, there's one of those things like there's watching some of the young kids who are doing YouTube stuff where it's like they just seem so confident in front of the camera or like talking into a microphone. And it's like these are kids in their early 20s who are just like, yeah, I've been doing this now for about 14 years, and I'm like, wow. Like you start something when you like just the experience of doing something makes it easier. Right. So eventually, I think we'll get good at this. For those of you who were with us in the beginning, I'm sorry. I hope we get better.
We'll get better or we'll quit. One of the two.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Nah,
I'm
I'll just keep being bad forever.
I'm going to become a professional like noir detective. I have to say, like as a genre, it's not something I've ever really been in, and most of the stuff that I've ever been exposed to has been parody of it.
Yes.
And I'm not sure why I picked it. I have a feeling. I was watching, and this is sort of a parting gift, but not. Last week, I think, maybe a week before, I was watching some of the other series, fairly new stuff, like in the past year on the Escapist YouTube channel. Now,
Oh
for
yeah.
people that watch Escapist, they think Yahtzee and Zero Punctuation and maybe some of the other
Yes.
stuff that he's done. But they've introduced some new series over the past couple of years that, for the most part, I've just like not paid any attention to whatsoever. And one of them was called Cold Take.
Okay.
and it's just a guy talking about like the video game industry and stuff. But it's done in a almost a noir detective-y. Like I don't know if that's exactly what he's going for, or whether he's going for like a more of a Mad Men style thing, but like it's, opens with a shot of somebody pouring a drink and he's got sort of the noir-ish inflections in his voice. I think
Mhm.
that's probably what got me thinking about it, because it's really the only thing like that I've really been exposed to that I can recall in the last like year.
Seth Skorkowski has a NPC character called Jack the NPC. I think it's like he's a jack of all trades because it's always Jack the NPC, whether he's in like a horned helmet and being a barbarian, or whether he's in the fedora and the trench coat and being like a private dick. But he does a thing like that where he speaks from the NPC's viewpoint in the noir kind of thing. I would like to let everybody at home know that I actually started drinking before we started the podcast, so you could be in for a wild ride.
I certainly hope so, because like we've got another half hour plus of this episode and another hour to do, and I'm out of ideas.
we we might have to dig into the treasure trove of Ian questions. to do an entire we'll do it like an Ian focused episode where we just answer Ian's questions in
That's
agonizing detail.
that might have to be the next Nerd Fights format. Is that you and I have to present podbag questions as if we were Ian.
I think I've got that one in the bag. The pod bag.
There you go. So yeah, noir detective. In trying to get into just like the delivery and the style, I have to say I get the appeal of it. Like I think I was a kid when like I saw the movie Dick Tracy, right? Like when I was young, and um, I think of like Captain Picard's holodeck noir detective shit that he was doing on TNG.
Yep.
And like those were my sort of early parody experiences of it. And I know
I
there's a
think
whole thing in that like old timey kind of. I think it's one of those
here's
things that like never really, like, it's a Hollywood fantasy, like Vikings, right, or pirates,
yep.
where even
Never
the
really happened.
accent never really happened like that. What do they call it? Like mid-Atlantic, Eastern Atlantic, or whatever. It was like a very sort of 1920s, 1930s Hollywood. Like there were books on how to sound this way
Yep.
that actors read so that they could,
Fake it.
and
Yeah.
then the stuff that they produced, then the movies and whatnot, that people that might have an appeal or liking for this genre, that's what they think of.
There's
So
a funny thing, I think, and this is only a guess based on my very vague memories of how this works. I think that noir detective might only exist as a parody. I think it was probably, especially in Hollywood, like in movies and TV shows, I think it was a parody of a certain style of book that was written, like a pulp novel that was popular in
mhm,
the 20s. Because I think there were some books that were written in that sort of style that were very much in that oeuvre, or
mhm.
however you want to say it, or however you want to put it. Uh, but I don't know that there was ever an actual noir detective movie that was made in seriousness.
Hmm.
But it would be interesting to go and see if we can find one.
There was, and I don't know, like, obviously there isn't a real thing to say I did a realistic depiction of it, but in trying to come up with words that felt right, like I found myself almost trying to be a little bit poetic. Now,
Hmm.
I obviously, like both of us, we had 3 minutes. So, you take what you think is the appropriate level and then you turn it up twice as high.
Mm-hmm.
You know, okay, you think you're wordy, you think you're using,
You purple prose.
Yeah. Like the it was open up the thesaurus. Okay, I want to come up with enigma, intrigue, mystery. How many ways can I say the same thing kind of over and over with different words? And
Hmm.
I don't know. I like the vibe.
It was I really got into it. I mean, I sat down and I wrote I don't know, like the first couple of lines. The very first thing that popped in my head, and I literally woke up at 3 o'clock in the morning, reached for my notebook beside my bed and wrote it down, was the she was all legs, 8 of them, and
8
they
of
went
them. They went all the
all the
way
way
up.
up.
I was this close to spitting out my drink as I was listening to that.
That was the first thing that came to me, and I have to work that in. I don't care what the rest of it is. That line has to go in there. And I started with that, and I worked with it like 2 or 3 different ways. And then I deleted all of that and just like and wrote it all. I sat down and wrote the whole thing in like, I don't know, 20 minutes after it had been stewing for 24 hours.
It's worth mentioning, as weird as the anthropomorphic animal angle of it was, we both chose to kind of be subtle with it. Like, you could have been
Yes.
overt.
Yep.
And it just came across as like, unless you were looking for it, you wouldn't know that that's what we were going for.
Yeah, I think I was a little bit descriptive when he hops across the bar and sits down on his tail. That makes it obvious that this is probably not a human person. But you could take that as a metaphor.
Yeah, and maybe that's just part of that sort of style of language and stuff where they would use these sort of nicknames for things anyways, like, yeah, you got your dolls and your dames and your stuff like that. But one of the lines that I wrote was like, the birds on the street,
Yeah,
call you
and
by blah blah blah, and it, like, unless you knew it was going to be an animal thing, that would just come across as like
that's
something
how they
completely normal. Yeah.
that's how they referred to women in the 20s. Yeah. Yeah, the fox thing was really nice too, because that was also very much like, it was really subtle. I agree.
Yeah.
That we both came across pretty subtle. You mentioned nicknames, and something popped into my head. Did you know that up until I don't know when, but the etymology of that is that it was not a nickname, it was an ick name, and then it got split the other way. It's weird. We've had several words in English that have done that. They've gone from, it starts with a vowel and we say an instead of a, and then there are some that have gone the other way, where they've lost a letter or gained a letter.
I did not know that. So in the case of ick name,
I
did
have
it
no idea where that
essentially
comes
function
from.
the same way though? Like, was
Yes. Oh no,
it
it's
just a
exactly.
general name, not like a negative name or something like that?
Nope. It was exactly the same thing. It was just another way to call something. But why? I don't know. I don't know.
English.
Somebody knows.
It's something to talk about on another episode, is just languages and how they evolve. Because you say, this is English, but like, you listen to what was English 200 years ago, 400 years ago, 600
Totally
years ago, and you get to a point where it's like just unrecognizable.
Yeah, but English is like 7 different languages in a trench coat, all pretending to be a language anyway.
Oh, sure, it's a terrible language. It's trash, but
it's ours.
It's ours. It's
Yeah.
odd. Well, no, it's not odd. I mean, I know why. It's sort of the common language a lot of the world uses, but what a shitty language to have it play out that way for.
We should have used like Latin or what's that one that the guy made up in upstate New York?
Oh, like Esperanto or
Esperanto.
Esperanto, yeah.
Yeah, which is basically just, Latin and Spanish all mangled together, which is sort of amusing because Spanish actually came from Latin. Yeah. French, Latin, Spanish,
it's all
English.
the same.
It's all the same.
It's just offend everyone.
Yeah. 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 You don't have a language. There is no language. We don't have a language. Language is a construct. It's a social construct. I refuse to identify with a language.
I don't blame you.
Yeah. I only speak English, and badly, but there you go.
All right. So closing out the Nerd Fights thing, please, if you're listening, check out the YouTube channel. Give us a vote. Tulson cheated, so vote for me.
No, Shane cheated because it was supposed to be a read-in, not a voice acting gig, for up and coming voice actor.
It was a read-in.
Yeah, you're supposed to. It's you reading it in, not you and your wife reading it in.
We weren't explicit about that. We were explicit about, in fact, if you play back that little part, you're like 2 minutes.
I know.
And I'm like, let's do 3. And you're like, could you imagine?
Yes.
Having
I
a
know.
DM do 3.5 minutes and you just got to sit there, just want to play, man. And here you are, fucking 3 minutes and 20 seconds.
Now, to be fair, the first 5 or 6 seconds of that are actually just music.
So?
And there are a few seconds of silence on the end. I'm just saying.
I'm just saying I fit my music and silence in exactly 3 minutes.
Yeah.
Because I'm not a big cheater.
I had too many words to fit in 3 minutes. Also,
what was with the 4:3 aspect ratio? Was that intentional or just?
It's 1:1 actually, and it's because the picture that I chose, which was the perfect picture, was actually I think taken on a cell phone. So I chopped off a bunch of the top and the bottom, and I couldn't get it to anything wider than that. If I had, more time and I was interested in making it an actual video as opposed to audio with a picture on it, I would have done some like black bars, or I would have, stretched it or added some vignette or something. But it's about the audio, and the picture is just there, so you got something to look at. I think it set the right tone.
Yeah, it was fine. I'm just picking at you.
Yeah. Leave a like for both of them so that we can. Yeah. Get lots of
this
viewers.
Is not us trolling for engagement at all.
I mean, it is a bit, but I mean, if you like it, great, and if you don't like it, why are you even here?
If you don't like it, please make sure to leave a comment about why you don't like it.
Yes,
we got to get that engagement somehow.
Yeah.
All right. So you made some notes in here. I don't know where this is going to go. Famous people you have no interest in meeting.
The way where it came from is that we do at work. We have a thing where we do like once a month we do a sort of, it's a Zoom call type thing where we have a social meeting, and there will be a question, a thing. Like one week it was like, tell us your favorite dad joke, and one of the things is that the manager who's in charge of it has asked, like, hey, I can't come up with all the ideas for these things myself. If you have a suggestion for a question or a topic for us to talk about, send it in. And I had come across this idea that, especially in like all of these team building exercises, everybody always asks, tell us something interesting about yourself. Right? And I mean, that's a struggle. But here's the thing. Tell me something boring about yourself. I'll start. I don't like white pasta sauce. Does it matter? Does anyone care? Absolutely not. It's a boring fact. So I like to kind of flip those questions on their head, because it got me thinking about things in a different way. So rather than, hey, tell me who your favorite celebrity is that you want to meet, tell me a celebrity you have absolutely no interest in meeting. And I mean, for both of us, I think it's probably going to be a longer list than the celebrities we actually want to meet.
Yeah, but almost all of them.
Yeah. Pick one out.
I mean, there's a couple ways you can tackle this question, right? Like, I've come to learn as wow, let's not sugarcoat it, as the world's gone to shit and has fostered and almost encouraged people to be the worst versions of themselves. A lot of people. That whole idea of never meet your heroes has been hitting me harder in the last 5-6 years or so than ever. And, people that I don't want to say like idolized, but people
We're a
that
fan of.
we're a fan of, appreciated their work. And like, I just don't like being in that weird position where you can't appreciate something because you know that the person that is involved in that process is just a shitty human being. And it's a weird sort of like retconning of something that, like, what they did back in that time that you enjoyed it hasn't changed, but your perception and appreciation has been tainted by the fact that, like, you can't enjoy it anymore. When's the last time you watched a Kevin Spacey movie?
You know what? I was never a real big fan of Kevin Spacey anyway. I think the last Kevin Spacey movie I watched was The Usual Suspects when it was reasonably new.
Yeah.
So it was a while ago.
Yeah.
Here's the funny thing. Like I think this is probably going to devolve into a little bit more of a discussion of what celebrity is and why it doesn't matter. But
Mhm.
I here's an ironic thing to think about, right? Like we're doing this podcasty thing about nerdy stuff, and nerdy stuff is typically things that exist in the media, right? Like movies, comic books, video games, those kinds of things. And it's occurred to me over the course of the last 15 episodes of this thing that I don't actually consume a lot of media anymore. I mean, anything that we're talking about, if we want to talk about stuff that happened in the 70s and 80s when I was a kid, yeah, I'm all over that. I
You got
watched movies
a
and
Wikipedia article to read all about it.
yeah, we'll give you, yeah. I'll give you a list of video games from the 80s that's as long as my arm. But like movies, like I'm surprised continually by, hey, did you know that such and such a movie is out? I'm like, what? It is? For how long? Like 5 years now, man. Ooh. So I'm not entirely sure that I'm up with things. But I was thinking about this, and I think there's two. There's an author called Joel Rosenberg that I really enjoyed. He wrote some books about a kind of trope that I really like about people from the real world being transported into a fantasy land and kind of being stuck there. And the stories are really interesting. The characters are really engaging. The unfortunate thing is that there's a lot of it's a lot of very sort of male viewpoint centric stuff.
Mhm.
Um, and when I was a teenager, that was fine because I was, totally clueless about those kinds of things. And I've come to realize, not necessarily like have more knowledge about it now, but be a little more knowledgeable of how clueless I am. Right? They say that smart people, or when you gain knowledge, you have more questions. You never find all the answers. You just find more and more questions. And I'm to the point now where I'm questioning whether or not I understand things at all. And there's some stuff in there now that I look back on and go, well, I know that's wrong, and I'm not exactly sure how one would deal with this. And I'm not sure that it was even bad. I just think it was indelicately handled. Right, and the rest of everything is awesome, and the story could have been just as good with all of that stuff left out. Like you brought it up when we did our little review of A Wise Man's Fear, where it's like, here's a dude who's, and I got to thinking about this this is like off on a massive tangent. Let's go off the rails here.
Tangent.
I'm just glad we got to use the sound effect. What was I talking about? I got derailed by the tangent music.
Okay, you were talking about Wise Man's Fear. I think we talked about fantasy in general in the past, about how there's certain baggage that didn't
yes.
really, yeah.
Right. Okay. So it came to this. There's a subreddit that I frequent called "Witches Against the Patriarchy," which I'm a member of specifically because the viewpoints expressed there are often very different, or from a very different perspective from my own. So it's a great place to learn how people who think differently think.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that pops up fairly frequently is that a lot of fiction does not have compelling or convincing female characters. And I mentioned before that I have like 150 different projects that I've started and sort of left by the wayside. I have a trunk full of, half-written books. Half-written is generous, introductions sort of mostly started.
Mhm.
And looking back, like sort of reflecting on the female characters that I've created, like I can't say that they're compelling or interesting or even, like real characters. And I was reflecting on why is that? Because I'm not a woman. I don't understand the world from a woman's viewpoint.
Mhm.
I can't write convincing female characters because I don't know how. And I think that's one of the things actually that stops me from finishing any kind of work of fiction is that I can't do it. Anyway, so that was the tangent off into the weeds of, you know, uh, whatever that was.
So let me ask you a question, and I'm not asking this to trigger anyone. Knowing your weakness
I think I know where you're going with this.
for not being able to write a strong female character, in today's day and age, in your own opinion, does that disqualify you from publicly writing?
I don't think so. I think there's two sort of ways to approach it. And the one that I'm currently trying to work my way into, and I'm going to recruit some friends to help with this, is to learn enough to at least be able to sort of step around easily misleading and easily like just the stupid shit that
Mhm.
like some of the things that some men believe about how women work are just flabbergasting.
Mhm.
um, like I know that I don't understand stuff and I'm sure that I have misconceptions as well, but there's some things I remember reading a story about a woman is going on vacation with her boyfriend, and it's like, oh, okay, so it's coming up and I'm going to be on my period while we're on vacation, and he says to her, well, can't you reschedule it? like I know I don't know a lot, but that's a stupid question. Anyway, so like just like that
Mhm.
aside, um I think there's two ways to go about it. The one is that you learn enough that you can, at very least, maybe not a main character or from the perspective of you can still have women in your stories
Mhm.
who are actual characters as opposed to cardboard cutouts or foils for the main character. Or you can go in the other direction and just say, I know that I don't understand the world from a woman's point of view. So there really aren't any women in my book except, or story or whatever you're writing, except to say, this is how I see their behavior. Um, I think both can work. You just have to be very careful about not. I mean, I have I have a propensity to mansplain things. And I don't do it because I'm trying to be condescending. I do it often because I know something and it's like, woohoo, I know something. I really want to share it. Uh, so it's a little bit more like a puppy
Mhm.
chasing a stick than anything else. But you have to be careful not to be in a position to say, you know, because you can't write something. I don't think, or at least I've never found anything that I've read that doesn't lecture a little bit, right? And you have to be
Mhm.
careful not to project a worldview of this is how women should be,
Mhm.
right? That's the number one and the easiest trap to fall into, because it's easy to look at something, anything, any social issue, and say, all right, we're going to set all emotion aside and we're going to take the time to write down how everything should work. And you know what? Like when you write stuff down like that, it seems really compelling until you realize people have feelings and logic doesn't always work.
So going back to The Name of the Wind and A Wise Man's Fear, one of the things that Patrick Rothfuss seemed to emphasize And I don't know if he was projecting, but through the character of Quoth, it was like very clear. I don't know how women work.
Yes.
I don't know how women feel. I don't understand them. I don't know how to talk to them. I don't know how to be with them. But he never really did the other side of that. Like, he didn't write a character that didn't know how to be with women and then have another character swoop in and say, this is how you be with women. It was sort of left vague. So as an author, maybe that is a projection of his understanding his own limitations. Do you find that sort of handling of it? Like, from, we really should be talking to women about this, but how
I,
did
I
you feel about the way he handled that?
I thought he did pretty well up until what you pointed out, where he wrote down basically all women are whores, and at that point it was like, okay, no,
Mm-hmm.
no, wrong, bad. You present your nose. I'm going to whack it with a newspaper. Try again. And on that note, if you are a woman and you're listening, congratulations. Like, there's a lot of hurdles to get to this point. There's a lot of places where
Yeah.
I think most women would go, oh, these
Do you
two
like
dudes are
pain?
like, Jesus Christ. But if you are a woman and you are listening and you would like to give us your opinion, please do, because I want to hear it. Like, I
Mm-hmm.
want to learn. I want to learn, and I can't learn without hearing from people who know.
I think I'm not going to pat myself on the back because I'm not in the right here, but I have a habit of, I understand I'll never understand women. I've been married for, well, technically married for, a million years, functionally married for 2 million years. I don't understand women, my wife, much more than I did the day I met her. And that's on me. I don't, I find myself in a dilemma, and I'm going to talk about my tabletop game that I run, my Tuesday night D&D game. I'm in a position where 3 of the players at my table are women.
They stuck around, so you're
we
doing
had some
something right.
players and some attrition and stuff, and not all of them are playing women characters in game. So, it balances out a little bit there in terms of the demands it places on me as a DM. But I find I don't think I consciously overcompensate, but I do, in hindsight, look back at this game and find that I've definitely created more important NPCs, stakeholders, people that they're involved that are women, and because of my limitations, they're fairly shallow. I'm sure
Mm-hmm.
there's some well-trodden cliches that I'm kind of sticking to. I'm aware of the baggage, a lot of the negative baggage that Dungeons and Dragons and fantasy literature and nerddom as a whole has had, and I do my
Yes.
best to try and avoid a lot of those pitfalls, but I can't avoid writing women and creating women characters and NPCs because I've got a table
Mm-hmm.
with women at it of diverse ages. And I don't say this to say that, like, it's been overly challenging. It's been eye-opening. And
Mm-hmm.
more in retrospect, as I go back and sort of summarize my story, like, I got to do some planning tomorrow. We've been on a couple week hiatus just with some vacations and stuff, and I was a little under the weather this past week, so postponed our first game back until Tuesday this week coming. And I gotta do some prep work, and I'm like, okay, well, let me think about all the stuff that we've done, and I'll look at my notes, and it's a lot of the characters, like the NPCs that the plot moves through around the characters. Like, most of the plot moves through the characters themselves, but where I insert other characters to sort of flesh that out. They build relations that, they have these almost like deity kind of like patrons, matron type characters that are choosing them as champions to do certain stuff. And through pure happenstance, those have all, either through my own choices or through the players' choices, have been female characters as well.
Hmm.
Positions of power, positions of completely trivial, some of them antagonists, some of them, ancillary adjacent protagonist kind of characters. It's a world filled with female characters, and I'm actually find myself struggling to fit the male characters in.
Hmm.
And I don't, again, it's not, this isn't, I DM at a table with women and he's not confident enough to put male characters in its game. It's not been that. It's been by complete accident. I'm just recognizing that here's where I've kind of landed. And hey, they're all at the table, like you say. They're still sticking around. We've been going for a year and a half now, maybe a little bit more than that, and everybody's quite happy, I think.
You know what?
But,
Like for any D&D table to last for a year and a half is actually quite an accomplishment. So I mean, kudos on that. I think here's a funny thing is that I think it's one of those things that asking the question is almost the answer to the question, right? Like the fact that you think about it is not necessarily a solution, but it's the first step on the way to, this isn't quite so bad.
mm-hmm.
This is an awfully long way from furry noir, by the way. I mean, it's a tangent that got us here, and I'm glad we're having the conversation, but it is kind of funny. Yeah, and I will absolutely echo your thoughts. I don't understand my wife any better than the day I met her. I don't. She's awesome. She's great. She's very, very patient.
With us, they have to be.
They gotta be. They gotta be.
Hey, do you want to do some pod bag stuff?
Let's do some pod bag stuff.
You've got mail.
Should we start referring to Ian as like our mascot?
I almost think that he's like the third member of our crew. He only writes in as opposed to actually talking on the podcast.
He's the guy that like refuses to return to the office to work.
he's our remote podcaster.
He's probably contributed more to the show than we have, but can't be bothered to show up.
Yeah, that's entirely true.
What the fuck, man? All right.
Put on a headset. Call in. Let's do it.
He's hitting us up with another one of his burning questions. What is your ideal hot dog? How is it prepared? What kind of condiments are on it? Personally, I love putting crushed potato chips and dill pickles on mine.
You know what? I prepared for this podcast, everybody, more so than any podcast that we have done so far.
Get hot dogs for lunch?
Well, no, I sat down like a half an hour before we were starting and read the document. It was sort of ironic that this is the one that was the most empty set of show notes that we've had so far. It literally, when I first opened the document, it had a question from Ian. That was it. It had nerd fights. That's it.
He's the only one that works.
A question from Ian. But I looked at it and I thought, you know what? Crushed potato chips is a really great idea. I do enjoy crushed potato chips on hamburgers as well. They add just a little bit of crunch, which is nice. So I'm interested to do it on hot dogs. Now, here's the funny thing: is that I don't actually like hot dogs all that much. My wife loves them. I'm not a big fan. I like my tubular meat to be more identifiable.
Yeah,
I mean, not a great deal more identifiable because I do quite love sausage. But hot dog here's a funny thing that I learned the other day is that a hot dog is actually not a specific kind of meat. A hot dog is like a spice profile.
Mm-hmm.
So you can make it out of whatever you want as long as you put the appropriate spices in it.
I know. And why do I know?
Oh my God. Have you worked in a hot dog factory?
I ran a restaurant called the Hot Dog Factory.
Oh, that's right too. Yeah.
Yeah. So my wife and I, this is going back, she's 10 years now almost.
10 years. Yeah. Well, I still lived in Belleville.
Yeah. We started a restaurant that specialized in craft, like made from scratch hot dogs and sausages, and that was the whole shtick. Now we were one of those places that, like, a lot of our menu items featured the stuff that has the Instagram appeal. Like our most
Mm,
popular recipes were, there's a hot dog and then there's a pile of something on top of it. You see it with a lot of burger joints today too, right? So
peanut
we had
butter.
like, I love peanut butter on a burger. It's
Yeah.
it's one of my favorite sort of go-to.
It's so weird and it's
It's
so
better
good.
though, like if you get real peanut butter and not like a sweetened sort of commercial peanut
Yeah.
butter. Just that umami punch. It's just
Hmm.
fantastic.
It's good in
Uh,
meatloaf too.
yeah, I haven't put it in meatloaf. I'll have to try it. Yeah, I could probably hide it. I don't know if Tanya will give me permission if I ask. So I may
Don't
just have
ask.
to do it one day.
Forgiveness
So
is
we just
way
like, hey, this
easier.
tastes a little bit different, but it's kind of good. What's in it? Special sauce.
I left the mayonnaise out in the sun for a couple of days before I used it.
Yeah. So anyway, we had a restaurant that specialized in gourmet hot dogs and weird recipes with a whole bunch of shit on it. Like our most popular one we called the Tijuana, which was basically taco beef and like corn chips and miscellaneous pile of cheese. Looked amazing, impractical to eat, but everybody loved it. Like we couldn't make those things fast enough. I was a big fan of our Honolulu ham job.
Just because of the name.
Oh, yeah, we had funny names for most of the stuff, but it's, this context is important because when you get back to what my ideal hot dog is, it's pretty plain. Now,
Yeah.
I don't like. Have you ever gone to like Montreal and had the steamies?
No.
I mean, to each their own. I'm not going to yuck anybody's yum, but not for me. I like a hot dog that has, even if it's like par cooked in water, just to cook it through, and then it sees time in a pan or a roller or something to give the skin just a little bit of snap.
Hmm.
You know, doesn't need to be fried, but like I prefer that even to
Grill
putting
marks.
something on like even before like putting something on the barbecue. I'd something where it's in contact with hot metal. And I just like me some mustard and some ketchup, and I do like a lightly toasted bun. Keep it real simple.
You know what? You say this, and it's funny because I keep going back to the hot dogs that I loved had absolutely nothing whatsoever to do with the actual hot dog themselves. It had to
Hmm.
do with where it came from. Every so often when I was a kid, because it was a drive, like it was an hour and a half drive to get there, we would go and watch the local hockey team play. And I mean, oh my God, you watch like Shoresy or something like that, where they're filming in the Sudbury Arena, where you see, there's seating for a couple of hundred people. Like if you put the little arena that we used to go and watch the local hockey team play at, if you put 150 people in it, some of them were standing up. But we would go every once in a while, and we would go at halftime or not halftime, at like between periods and get a hot dog at the concession. And I think this is how old I am. I think the hot dogs cost a quarter. But they would come in a tinfoil packaged, and they were like the bun was steamed, the hot dog was boiled. It was awful, right? By any standards of actual food, taste, texture, terrible hot dog. But the atmosphere that I got it in, and eating it out of that little tinfoil packet with a little bit of ketchup and a little bit of mustard on it, it's just absolutely perfect. Right? It's a nostalgia thing for me. It has absolutely nothing to do with the taste of the food. The same thing happens to me actually at Taco Bell. Taco Bell does not make good food. I mean, I don't think we're ever going to get a Pepsi sponsorship, so it's okay for me to diss Taco Bell a little bit. I love going to Taco Bell, and the food is
You do it every
absolutely.
time you're down here.
I do, and the food is absolute shite. and I'm disappointed every time, but I keep going back.
Is it purely nostalgia, or is it the scarcity thing because you don't have a Taco Bell close to home?
I have a Taco Bell close enough that I could probably scratch that itch if I needed to. We do actually have a Mexican restaurant in town, right? It's
Okay, but
one
that's
of
not the same.
No, it's actual food at the
Yeah.
restaurant here in town. Like there's somebody who actually cooks the things and puts them
Mm.
to. It's not. We used to have a joke. The nostalgia for me comes when I was in college. I used to go to Taco Bell for lunch every day because at that time you could get like the number 2 meal, which was 2 hard tacos and fries and a drink for like $1.49 or $1.99 or something like that.
Fuck, you're
Uh,
old.
yeah. And not only that, but the girl behind the counter had a crush on me, so I got the employee discount and I got it for like less than that. So it was basically lunch was $1. And we used to joke because a friend of mine and I, we used to go every time, and we used to say, this meat seems a little odd. You know where I think it comes from? I think, on the back of milk cartons, this is dating me too, because they used to put missing children's pictures on the back of milk cartons. And it's like, those pictures of the kids on the back of milk cartons? I think they cut those out and grind them up, and that's the taco meat. Like, it's not the actual kids. It's not, it's they cut out the
Well,
milk
it's too
carton.
much meat for Taco Bell.
Yeah. It's a
You know
meat
what?
process.
It's just going to say there's something to be said for meat paste and edible, what is it, pasteurized, processed, edible plastic cheese food product.
Extruded. You got to get extruded in there somewhere.
So extruded meat paste and
Yeah.
pasteurized, processed, edible plastic cheese food product. Fry Supreme, man. I love Fry Supreme.
Oh, and they're so terrible. They're awful.
They're the worst. They're
not even food.
Like literally the worst. Not figuratively. Literally the worst. But good. You know what? I'm not ashamed to admit it.
I just keep going back.
I couldn't eat it every day, but I like it.
There's like Cheese Whiz. It's processed cheese food, and they have to tell you it's food because otherwise you wouldn't know. I stole that joke from somebody, and I don't know who. So, like, if you're a professional comedian and you're watching this and you've just heard your joke, sorry, man. But I heard it in the 90s, so I'm pretty sure it's in the public domain by now.
All right. Well, let's wrap this thing up with some parting gifts.
And I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes.
Anybody want a peanut?
Now, I have to apologize in advance because this is the one the one part of the show I was least prepped for. Like, I was prepared to wing the rest of the show. And we were getting ready to hit the record button. I'm like, oh, I don't have anything.
Here's something.
So here's something. I generally try and avoid talking about like super high profile YouTube channels. One, they don't need, what little exposure we're giving them. And there's part of me that's like, hey, I'm the underdog, but there's like that next level up that's also kind of the underdog, and I'd like to plug some of them. But I'm going after a big dog today. But it is a wonderful channel if you've never watched it, called Kurt's Gazette. It's a terrible name. You'll recognize it if you just do a search for In a Nutshell, you'll find it as well. It's a channel that does sort of animated educational stuff. You've probably seen some of their videos, even just as shorts. They've got these very sort of, I don't want to use the term cartoony because it's got a very, if you've ever watched some of the older crash course videos that John and Hank Green did, where they were animation style from a company called Thought Bubble, I think it was. It's very much sort of in that style. They got their own thing going, though. You'll see these little animated bird things that are featured in all of their videos. And they'll cover everything from, cataclysmic events to literally the universe ending, to diseases. My wife calls it the Doom and Gloom channel. The guy that does the voiceover for the English speaking version of the channel is a very sort of unique voice. And as soon as you hear him, it's like, doom and gloom, doom and gloom. Actually, I find that most of their stuff leaves off on a kind of a hopeful tone. It's like, yes, climate change is going to be very bad if we don't do anything, but here's 72 things that we could start doing now to make a difference.
Lots of people are doing things.
Yeah, and they generally try and focus on like, listen, you personally are going to have a hard time making a difference if all you're focused on is what you can change in your own behaviors. But they try and educate and like, hey, you got to be talking to people in government. You got to be, making educated decisions and how you vote and yada yada yada. Anyway, check them out. One of the more, and it wasn't always the case, they had some speed bumps in their early years, but one of those channels that like writes a script, vets it, sends it away to be peer reviewed, occasionally has lawyers looking at it before they bring it out, just to make sure it's as informed and accurate as possible and sort of small, easily digestible little nuggets. And it's quite entertaining. And also, if you're a sucker for doom and gloom like I am, you want to understand the heat death of the universe or, what happens during a supernova. I mean, there's that too.
Yeah, you said the world was going to end when?
What time is it?
Ah,
Soon.
yeah, any minute now. Any million or 2 million or 3. Oh, sorry. You said billion. Oh, thank God.
Did I?